And we are go. We are go. And I'm assuming, yes, everything's plugged in. Everything is set up. Hello, I'm Tad. I'm going to be reading and otherwise sharing gems of wisdom and nuggets of craftiness and all kinds of things like that with y'all. I know it's so exciting. I can hardly stand it either. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you may be. It is 1 o'clock in the morning here in California, and I am in the process of getting ready to read some stuff at you. I will, of course, say hello to everybody who has checked in. While I'm getting ready to do that, let me think if there's anything else of interest I need to tell you about. Just the usual family stuff. We had a very nice evening with a dear family friend and well, really family member. She was our assistant for a long time, Dina, and went out to dinner with her. And of course, she was kind of a third parent, helped raise the kids, and so is always very dear to us. And so we all went out as a family, which was great fun. I finally gave up on the young people in the Christmas tree when I looked up and said, okay, Valentine's Day is past and the Christmas tree is still sitting out on the deck, which is where I had moved it to after I pulled some of the stuff off of it. And so I went out to the deck and just picked the damn thing up and threw it over the edge, and then went out into the yard and dragged it into the back 40. So it's way, way out at the edge of the property where no one will ever see it, except I'm thinking now that I'm going to start a Christmas tree graveyard out there. And, it will be like one of the great secrets, of the family that will only be shared from, the patriarch and matriarch to the eldest child, where the location of the Christmas tree graveyard is, because frankly, I'm too embarrassed at this point to ask the recycling and trash people to haul it away. They do that in early January and sometimes as late as kind of middle January, but getting on towards the end of February, it's pretty embarrassing. So anyway, I was driven to that point where I actually had to drag a Christmas tree across the property because I was just so sick of seeing it out there. So, anything else of interest to tell? Not really. There's family stuff going on, of various kinds that isn't any of it really stuff to be talking about. We're all well here. We're all staying out of trouble. Everybody is in a fairly good mood. Of course, we're all still, not getting out as much as we would in a non-pandemic time. But, as I said, we went out tonight. We went to dinner. So that was God, that was super exciting. Now that I think about it, I haven't done that much lately. That's the first time I think we've been out with a whole family at the same time since, God, maybe March of 2020, maybe, I think. Because Deb and I have gone out a couple times. And I think the kids have gone out on their own to do a couple of things. And we went to one movie as a semi-family group. But I think that's the first time that we've taken everybody out to dinner at the same time, which is not something we do all the time, but I mean, we used to do it with some frequency. And like I said, I think first time since 2020. So, since March of 2020, so not even early 2020. So that was fun, exciting, different, a change of pace. Beyond that, not really a lot to report. As mentioned, still working on all the same things. I've had a lot of wrist and hand problems the last couple of weeks, so I've been kind of trying to stay away from the keyboard as much as I can. And since I still have thinking work to do, I've been trying to do that instead. But there's only so much when you get into a situation like this with one of these really big stories with many plot lines and many characters. You can only, even when you get close to the end of it, like I am at the moment, there's only so much planning ahead you can do because you've got so many possibilities for ways that you could jigger things around so that that these characters will show up here and these characters will show up here and these will be able to do this and these will bring such and such an insight or such and such a whatever. So even most of the way through a story, there's still a lot of different ways it could go. But what I've found, what's been really interesting this time, because I um, haven't been plugging away in quite the same way that I always have in the past. As I mentioned, especially the last couple of weeks. First of all, I had to take time off to finish Narrow Dark, Into the Narrow Dark, and that was being treated as a separate book. So I was actually leaving the end of the story largely alone. And now I'm back working on that. But then the last week and a half or so, I haven't really been able to do much because of, pain and weirdness in my hands and wrists. So I've been mostly, as I said, just thinking. But one of the things I've discovered is there's a limit because there are so many possibilities, even at the end of a story, for how many different ways you could juggle things to make things work out. That what I'm going to need to do actually is get back to the writing, because during the course of actually writing the things, you will start selecting, either consciously or unconsciously or both. You start selecting things or deselecting things. In other words, you start making decisions that curtails possibilities every time. It's kind of like the opposite of the multiple universe theory, where every time there's a quantum fluctuation, an entire new branch universe pops off. And this is kind of the reverse, which is that every time you make a decision, you're closing down the number of possibilities, which is actually a good thing. So I've realized that I could literally, even with say 20 variables, or, which I've actually got many more than that, but just even with 20 variables, there's just thousands of different ways you can make things happen. And of course, I'm trying to figure out the best possible ways, but at a certain point, you really need to just go and start writing things, and then you're making some of the choices as you go, not based on pure speculation, but like, okay, if I write this scene this way, which feels good to me, I am going to cut off such and such a possible, this character will then not be able to do X later on, or this character will definitely now be set up to be at such and such a place at such and such a time, and that will change that scene when I get to it. So it's been a really interesting process. It's something I haven't quite done before. I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but it's I guess that's the basic information to be gleaned from this long babbling rant, is that you can actually think too much, and you have to actually start selecting out possibilities in the writing process, because otherwise you just go mad with all the different ways that you can do things. Anyway, so before I start reading, let me check in and see who is here, or at least who's checking in to say hello. And I see Olaf, my dear friend Olaf, says, good morning from rainy and stormy Germany. We have not had that here lately. We've had quite nice weather, but of course, many other places, including England and Germany, have had ghastly weather. England just had one of the worst storms they've ever had. And of course, just before that, we had a huge, I don't know what you'd call it, but it was basically a huge cold wave on the East Coast. And, and the other side of the country from me, but, people that I know and care about are having to, well, even people I don't know but care about anyway. I don't have to know somebody to care whether they live or die or suffer or whatever. But anyway, there's been that going on here too. So, gee, yeah, the weather sure has gotten weird the last few years. It seems crazy that there's no reason that we can look at to understand why that might be. Anyway, so, hello, Olaf. Good to see you. Mr. Unixed. Jerry always brings that out in me, because he always says, Mr. Williams. It's kind of like Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Anyway, so hi, Jerry. Good to see you. Chris, hello, good morning to you. Julian, or Julian, since I don't know if you're pronouncing it in the English way or the German way, but I will say it anyway. Hello, Julian or Julian. And if you have a preferred pronunciation, please feel free to let me know. Holger, good morning, good evening, and all of that. And good to have you. And Ronnie, hello, good to see you too. Thank you for joining me. Mark, coming in from stormy Yorkshire. Yes, so you guys are getting, what is it? It's the Storm Eunice, Eunice, Eunice. I used to have a boss named Eunice, except he was from Lebanon and he spelled it Yunes. So not quite the same name. And he was the Middle Eastern Basil Fawlty. He was quite a character. I could have written a book about him. He was such a character. He was one of those people who would literally tell untruths in front of you to customers. Oh, that was came in today, but it's something, and you go, no, it didn't come in. I mean, why did you, there's no reason to tell that person that. You could have just said, no, we don't have that yet, or something. Which was not the crazy part. The crazy part is then he would turn around and tell obvious untruths to, like me. I was the manager. He was the owner of the store. I was the manager of this store. And he would tell obvious untruths to me after having just done it in front of me and acknowledge to me that he was lying to the customers, like just flat out lying. And then he would turn around and do the same thing with me and like expect me for some reason to have just like scrubbed it all out of my memory or something and not remember that he had just told these like really obvious untruth to someone else. And then he'd say things equally unlikely and frankly things that he and I both knew were not true to me. Anyway, there were many were the stories, but he was he one of the things somebody said to me, I think it might have been my ex-wife, but whoever it was said it to me, was actually really true. They said most characters in situation comedies, especially the most beloved or the ones that everybody talks about the most, if you knew them in real life, you would want to murder them. You would hate them in real life. Basil Fawlty is a perfect example, but there's also like, April Ludgate from Parks and Rec. If any of you in Europe have seen those shows, wonderful, excellent show, situation comedy, hilarious. But if you actually had to deal with April in real life, you would want to kill yourself. Kramer from Seinfeld, I mean, it's like, oh my God, what a horrible person to live with, or, or to have as a neighbor. But, anyway, but so I actually worked with a Basil Fawlty in real life, who was all the Basil Fawlty things. He was vain and he was, constantly trying to, make himself look more than he was and just a completely incapable of telling the truth, but wouldn't admit it even when he was pinned, all these kinds of things. So I can attest to this, that in fact, in real life, these kinds of characters that are so funny as characters are nightmares to deal with. Anyway, so that I think all came off of saying hello to Mark, who is in stormy Yorkshire. Oh yes, because I was thinking about the name of the storm that has just swept through England. I hear a lot of this stuff from my in-laws and through Deborah mostly. Anyway, Wouter, hello. And Wouter and Iris are both checking in while frying up some flipping bitches. And he says, sorry, that's what French toasts are called here. Flipping bitches. There you go. See, if you hadn't tuned in to tonight's reading, you would not have been told. Those of you who do not know what people call things. I guess in the Netherlands, I'm trying to remember if that's where Holger is. I'm easily, oh no, Waldesruhe. Okay, they're in Germany. Okay, so, all right, okay, quiet in Waldesruhe. And although they've had the storm too. Anamika, hello, good morning to you. Cliff, I know you're over here with me in California, so you are not being subjected to the horrible storm. So I'm pleased for you. I'm sad for all my friends who are in fact suffering in rain and winds and falling trees. Saul, good morning. Lovely to have you. And who else here? Everybody, all the Europeans are comparing notes on how bad it was where they lived, which is worth reading. Ilva, hello. Been a bit tired from being out to a teeny tiny party yesterday night. Yeah, that sounds to me like seriously hungover from partying like a rock star. which, that's Ilva does do that frequently. There's a reason she's always breaking things and, screwing up her knees and hands. And, it's because the woman is out partying every night. The truth has to be told. Jeremy, hello. Jeremy also is here in the California end of things. So good to see you, Jeremy. Petra, Christine and Petra checking in and living in the same town. Excellent. Are you both in Berlin? Is that what's going on here? I'm having trouble keeping track of everything. Suzanne checking in from wet and windy Yorkshire. John checking in from Missouri. Hello, Missouri. Excuse me. I should know that. I am not from Missouri, but I have connections in that part of the world. Anyway, Sonia. Hello, Sonia. Good to see you. John, a pleasure, in which you make every potential decision. Yeah, John's talking about my quantum plotting conundrum. Yeah, that's true. But basically, I have made every decision. It's just I haven't written them all. But at some point, I have virtually thought of every possibility, including killing all the characters off. That used to happen more during To Green Angel Tower, which I was writing during a very difficult period of my life, and I was seriously thinking about having a hay wain, which is a large wagon, just jump the sidewalk and kill all the characters. And a friend of mine, Mark Craigbaum, said, "Yeah, that would be super postmodern, just like after this whole long buildup and 3/4 of the way through the last volume, and then, yes, a huge wagon jumped the sidewalk and killed all the characters, and that's the end." I didn't do that, obviously, and it probably would have gotten some people grumpy with me if I had, but it was tempting, as I was into my third year of working on that book and, getting divorced and moving to another country and all kinds of other stuff that was going on. Anyway, and torturing my main characters. Anthony, hello. Good to see you from Tokyo. What a pleasure. How nice. I'd love to go to Tokyo someday, and I plan to. Hazel, good morning, sweetie. Hazel, my mother-in-law, checking in. And Wouter's in the Netherlands. Okay. All right. Waldesroo is in the Netherlands then? Okay, good. It's sometimes hard for those of us who are in the English speaking world to tell the difference between certain parts of Mitteleuropa and others. Even though I'm slightly better informed on these things than most people, but anyway. So thank you for checking in and making sure I understood that. Okay, yes. So Wouter is in the Netherlands and Holger is in Waldesroo in Germany. Okay. And Ilva's already trying to explain that, like, don't listen to Tad. Whatever he's saying is just nonsense. I said that to my kids tonight, actually, over dinner. They were saying something, but I was talking about the fact that I just, tend to lie kind of all the time, and they said, but that's really mean. And I said, no, but it's, first off, it's mostly just because I like to say things that don't make much sense, and second of all, you guys haven't believed me since you were like 2 years old, so how could it be mean? Because if I say you are the most horrible children that ever were, and you should all be put in a sack and thrown into the nearest body of water and drowned like kittens, you knew I was just saying that. I wouldn't really do it because, for one thing, it would be a waste of a perfectly good sack. So anyway, I don't know where that came from, but yeah. So I just routinely say things that aren't true. No, Ilva is not a party animal. She really is. Anyway, who else have I checked in? Okay, Holger is Waldesroo. Yeah, I figured that out, Wouter. I'm sorry, it took me a moment there. I'm also trying to read these little things here that keep moving as I'm reading them. Yes, Ilva says, I remember you telling us of your first rule of parenting: lie to them constantly. Yes, that's absolutely true. I believe it very strongly. One of Connor, our sons, our eldest biological, one of Connor's very, very first multi-syllable words was, one day I said something to him, one of my absurd comments, and he said, "Daddy, you are being sarcastic." And I said, "Yes, my son, you have figured it out. I am being sarcastic," which I still use. I like that. Anyway, so Hello to everybody who has joined us. It's a great pleasure to have you, as always. I'm about to read what we, whoops, just knocked the cat brush over. What we read last week was a segment where Robert Wells, who is the multi billionaire tech guy, also very old, not as old as Jongleur, aka Osiris, but very old himself, was having a meeting with Daniel Yakubian, who is another one of the Grail Brotherhood, who is an army general, a military general. And Daniel Yakubian and Robert Wells were talking about essentially the fact that they don't trust Jongleur, and that this mystery person who has escaped from some kind of virtual captivity into the system is something that they don't trust Jongleur to tell them the truth about. So they are going to follow up on it themselves and see if they can find out how this person escaped and is running around in the Grail system, the Otherland system, the virtual universe. So that's a shortened version of that. So from there, we are continuing still in the same chapter, but to a different part of the chapter where we are, because this chapter still has a couple of other character sections in it. So anyway, continuing. And the wolf ran and ran, trying to escape from the burning hot stones. But the woodsman had sewn them firmly into his belly. He ran to the river to drink, and swallowed the river water until the stones inside him finally grew cold. But they were too heavy, and their weight pulled him down beneath the water where he drowned. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother embraced in joy. Then they thanked the woodsman for his good deed, and they all lived happily ever after. Excuse me. Mr. Sellers coughed and reached out with his trembling hand for the water glass. Christabel handed it to him. But that's not how it goes in my storybook, Sunglasses. She felt slightly upset. Stories were not supposed to have more than one ending. In the real story, the wolf is sorry and promises he won't ever do it again. Mr. Sellers took a drink of water. Well, things change. Stories change. In the original version, I believe even Red Riding Hood and her grandmother did not survive, let alone the wicked wolf. What's a narrational virgin? He showed her his crooked smile. The very beginnings of a story, or the true thing that someone weaves a story around. Christabel frowned. But they're not true. My mommy said so. They're just stories. That's how come you're not supposed to be frightened. But everything comes from somewhere, Christabel. He turned and looked out the window. You could only see a little sky through the thick, tangly leaves of the plants growing in front of it. Every story is at least slenderly rooted in the truth. Her wristband began to blink. She frowned, then stood up. I have to go now. Daddy's got the day off tomorrow, so we're going to go away tonight, and I have to pack up my toys and clothes. She remembered what she was supposed to say. Thank you for the story, Mr. Sellers. Oh. He sounded a little surprised. He didn't say anything more until she came back into the living room after changing into her regular clothes. My young friend, I'm going to have to ask you to do something. I haven't wanted to impose on you. I feel tremendously bad about it. Christabel didn't know what he meant, but it sounded like something sad. She stood quietly, finger to her mouth, and waited. When you come back from this trip, I'm going to ask you to do some things for me. Some of them might be things you think are bad. You may feel frightened. Will they hurt? He shook his head. No,
I would not do anything that would cause you pain, little Christabel. You are a very important friend of mine. But they will be secret things, and this will be the most important secret anyone ever asked you to keep. Do you understand?" She nodded, eyes wide. He looked very serious. "Then go on now, and have a nice weekend with your family. But please come see me as soon as you possibly can when you get back. I hadn't known you were going, and I'm afraid it—" He trailed off. "Will you come and see me as soon as you can? Will you be back on Monday?" She nodded again. "We're flying back Sunday night, my mommy told me." "Good. Well, you'd better go now. Have a good time."
Christabel started toward the door, then turned. He was looking at her. His funny, melted-looking face seemed very unhappy. She rushed back and leaned over the arm of his chair and kissed him. His skin felt cold and smoother than her daddy's bristly cheek. "Goodbye, Mr. Sellers." She closed the door fast so his wet air wouldn't get out. He called something after her as she ran down the path, but she couldn't understand him through the thick glass. She walked slowly out of Beekman Court, thinking very hard. Mr. Sellers had always been nice to her, and he was her friend, even if her parents told her never to visit him. But now he said he was going to ask her to do bad things. She didn't know what the bad things were, but it made her stomach feel upset thinking about them. Would they be little bad things, like when she took the soap? That was little because no one found out and she hadn't gotten in any trouble, and it wasn't like she stole it from a store or someone else's house anyway. Or would they be a different kind of bad? The very, very, very bad thing of getting into a stranger's car, which always made her mommy so upset when she talked about it. Or a confusing, secret bad thing like Daddy's friend Captain Parkins once did that made Mrs. Parkins come over to their house crying. These were bad things that no one ever explained. They just made faces and said, "You know," or talked about them after Christabel went to bed. In fact, Mr. Sellers himself was a bad thing that no one ever explained. Her mommy and daddy had told her he wasn't well and that he shouldn't have visitors, especially little children, but Mr. Sellers had said that wasn't really true. But then why would her parents tell her not to visit a nice, lonely old man? It was very confusing. Worrying, she cut across the corner lawn and onto Redland. She heard a dog bark in the house and wished she had a dog too, a pretty little white dog with floppy ears. Then she would have a friend she could talk to. Portia was her friend, but Portia only wanted to talk about toys and Uncle Jingle and what other girls at school said. Mr. Sellers was her friend too, but if he wanted her to do bad things, maybe he wasn't a very good friend. "Christabel!" She looked up, startled. A car had stopped next to her and the door was swinging open. She made a little screaming noise and jumped back. Was this the bad thing Mr. Sellers meant coming for her now? The worst bad thing of all? "Christabel, what are you doing?" "It's me." She bent down so she could look in the car. "Daddy! Hop in. I'll give you a ride." She climbed into the car and gave him a hug. He still had a little shaving smell on his cheek. He was wearing a suit, so she knew he was on his way back from work. She sat back while her seatbelt fitted itself. "Didn't mean to startle you, baby. Where were you coming from?" She opened her mouth and had to stop for a moment. Portia lived in the other direction. "I was playing with Ophelia." "Ophelia Weiner?" "Uh-huh." She kicked her feet and watched the trees slide past above the windshield. The trees slowed down, then stopped.
Christabel looked out the side window, but they were only on Stillwell, 2 blocks from home. Why are we stopping here? Her father's hard hand touched her under her chin. He turned her face around to look at his. His forehead was wrinkled. You were playing with Ophelia Weiner just now at her house? Her daddy's voice was careful and scary. She nodded. Christabel, I gave Mr. and Mrs. Weiner and Ophelia a ride to the airport at lunchtime. They've gone on vacation, just like we're going on vacation. Why did you lie to me? And where have you been? His face was scary now, too. That quiet, angry face she knew meant she'd done a bad thing. That was a spanking face. It went all blurry as she started to cry. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry. Just tell me the truth, Christabel. She was really scared. She wasn't supposed to visit Mr. Sellers, and if she told her daddy, she'd be in big trouble. She'd get a spanking for sure, and maybe Mr. Sellers would get in trouble too. Would they give him a spanking? He was very small and weak and would probably get hurt. But Mr. Sellers wanted her to do bad things, he said, and now her daddy was angry. It was hard to think. She couldn't stop crying. Christabel Sorensen, we're not going anywhere until you tell me the truth. She felt his hand on top of her hair. Look, don't cry. I love you, but I want to know. It's much, much better to tell the truth. She thought of funny-looking Mr. Sellers and how unhappy he looked today. But her daddy was sitting right next to her, and her Sunday school teacher always said that telling lies was bad and that people who told lies went to hell and burned. She took a deep breath and wiped her nose and her upper lip. Her face was all yucky and wet. I went to see... Yes? He was so big the top of his head touched the car roof. He was as big as a monster. This lady... What lady? What's going on, Christabel? It was such a big lie, such a bad lie, that she could hardly say it. She had to take another breath. She has a dog, and she lets me play with him. His name is Mister. And I know Mommy said I can't have a dog, but I really, really want one. And I was afraid you'd say I couldn't go over there anymore. It was so surprising to hear the terrible big lie come out of her own mouth that she started crying again, really loud. Her daddy looked at her so hard that she had to look away. He took her chin and gently pulled her back. Is that the truth? I swear it is, Daddy. She sniffed and sniffed until she wasn't crying too hard, but her nose was still running. It's the truth. He sat up and made the car go again. Well, I'm very angry with you, Christabel. You know that you're always supposed to let us know where you're going, even on the base. And you are never, never to lie to me again. Got it? She wiped her nose again. Her sleeve was wet and sticky now. Got it. A dog. He turned into Windicott. Of all the damn fool things, what's this lady's name anyway? I don't know. She's just a grown-up lady. Old, like Mom. Her daddy laughed. Whoops. I don't think I'd better pass that along. He made his face grouchy again. Well, I'm not going to give you a spanking because you finally told me the truth, and that's the most important thing. But you told a lie to begin with, and you went off without telling us where you were going. I think when we get back from Connecticut, you're going to be grounded for a little while. A week or 2. That means you'll stay in the house. No playing at Porsche's, no trips to the PX, and no grown-up old lady with a dog named Mister. Is that fair? Christabel was full of different feelings. Scary jump off the high board feelings, and upset stomach feelings, and exciting secret feelings. Her insides were all whirly and raw. She sniffed again and rubbed her eyes. That's fair, Daddy. He felt his heart quicken. The sandstorm, which had briefly swept across the red desert, was failing, and through its dying flurries he could see the great squat shape of the temple. It was huge and curiously low, a great fence of columns, an immense grin set in the vast dead face of the desert. Osiris himself had designed it that way, and apparently it suited the other. This was his 10th visit to the place, and the temple remained unchanged. His great bark slowly drifted toward its mooring. Figures dressed all in billowing white, with masks of white muslin stretched over their features, caught the rope thrown by the captain and pulled the boat toward shore. A line of musicians, similarly faceless, blossomed into existence on either side of the road, plucking at harps, blowing on flutes. Osiris waved his hand. A dozen muscular Nubian slaves appeared, naked but for loincloths and dark as grape skin, already sweating in the desert heat. Silently, they bent and lifted the god's golden litter and carried it down the quay toward the temple road. He closed his eyes and let the gentle swaying put him deeper into his contemplative mood. He had several questions, but he did not know how many he would get to ask, so he had to decide in advance which were the most important. The attending musicians played as he passed. They also sang a quiet, up and down murmuring that hymned the glories of the Ennead and especially its master. He opened his eyes. The massive temple seemed to rise out of the desert as he approached, stretching on either side to the limits of the horizon. He could almost sense the nearness of its inhabitant, its prisoner. Was it only the force of anticipation and the familiarity of his habitual progress, or could the other actually make himself felt through what should be the unbreachable walls of the new mechanism? Osiris did not like that idea. The litter made its slow way up the ramp, climbing until even the great river seemed only a thread of murky brown. The Nubians bearing him groaned softly. A small detail, but Osiris was a master of the particular and took joy in these tiny bits of authenticity. They were only puppets, of course, and were not actually lifting anything. In any case, they would no more groan of their own accord than they would ask to be moved into a different simulation. The slaves carried him through the massive door and into the cool shadows of the antechamber, a hypostyle hall lined by tall columns. Everything was painted white and covered with the words of spells which would calm and restrain the temple's inhabitant. A figure lay prostrate on the floor before him and did not look up even when the god's processional music reached a feverish pitch and then fell silent. Osiris smiled. This high priest was a real person, a citizen, as it was so quaintly put. The god had chosen him very carefully, but not for his abilities as an actor, so Osiris was glad to see he remembered at least some proper comportment. Up, he said. I am here. The bearers stood resolutely, holding the litter now without a tremble. It was one thing for his Nubians to simulate human frailty when he was on the move, but there were times when he did not wish to be pitched around like a saint's icon being carried down a steep Italian street, and facing a living underling was such a time. It was not conducive to dignity. O Lord of life and death, by whose hand the seed is germinated and the fields are renewed, your servant bids you welcome. The priest stood and made several ritual obeisances. Thank you. How is he today? The priest folded his arms across his chest as if hugging himself for warmth. The god guessed it was a gesture of actual physical unease, not a response to the simulation. As carefully as with every other detail, Osiris had made sure that the temple sweltered in desert heat. He is active, sir, the priest said. Oh, Lord, I mean. He's driven the readings up as high as they've been for some time. I wanted to take the container temperature down a few more degrees, but I'm afraid that if we go any colder, we'll risk losing him altogether. The priest shrugged. In any case, I thought it best to talk to you first. Osiris frowned, but only at the anachronistic language. It was impossible to make technicians remember where they were for very long, or rather where they were supposed to be. Still, this one was the best he'd found. Allowances had to be made. You did well. Do not adjust the temperature. It is possible he knows that I am coming, and it has excited him. If he remains too active when I have finished, well, we shall see. Go ahead then, sir. I've opened the connection. The priest backed out of the way. Osiris made a gesture and was carried forward to the stone doorway on which the great cartouche of Lord Set had been carved, each hieroglyph as tall as one of the Nubian bearers. He gestured again, and the music fell silent. The door swung open. The god left his litter and floated through the doorway into the darkened cavern beyond. Osiris drifted toward the massive black marble sarcophagus, which stood alone in the middle of the empty, rough-hewn chamber, its lid carved to resemble a sleeping figure with the body of a man and the head of an unrecognizable beast. He hovered before it for a moment. Excuse me. He hovered before it for a moment, composing his thoughts. A pulse of orange light leaked through the crack between coffin and lid, as though in greeting. I am here, my brother, he said. I am here, Lord Set. There was a crackling hiss, and a moment of grating noise that hurt the god's ears. The words, when they came, were almost unrecognizable. Not brother. There was another rush of interference. Time too slow. Want. As always, Osiris felt the distant distress signals from his real body, far away and safe in its soothing fluids. It was fear, stark fear racing through him, making his nerves flare and his limbs twitch. It was the same every time he heard that inhuman croaking. I know what you want. He forced himself to keep his mind on what he had come to do. I am trying to help you. You must be patient. Hear blood sound. Smell voices. Want light. I will give you what you want, but you must help me. Do you remember our bargain? There was a deep, wet moaning. For a moment, the sarcophagus shimmered before the god's eyes, individual monads separating like an exploded diagram. Within, in a shadow deeper than ordinary darkness, something smoldered with its own faint light, something twisted that writhed like an animal. For a moment, its outline shifted again, and he thought he could see a single eye staring out of the whirling chaos. Then the whole thing shivered, and the sarcophagus was back, as solid and black as simulation engineering could make it appear. Remember, trick. If the oozing, rattling voice could be said to have expression, the other sounded almost sullen, but
Some far deeper fury seemed to be bubbling beneath, a thought that made Osiris suddenly wish he could swallow.
There was no trick. You would not be alive without my help, and you will never be free without my help either. Now I have some questions for you.
There was another burst of cacophony. When it had quieted, the voice came, grinding and scraping again.
Bird from your cage, primary, and the running.
The sound became unintelligible.
What? What does that mean?
The sarcophagus shuddered. For a split second, it had too many facets, too many angles. The voice lurched and slurred like a piece of equipment with dying batteries.
From other side, voices are soon coming.
The god's fear was mixed with frustration.
Who's coming? From the other side? What does that mean?
This time it sounded almost human, as close as it ever came.
Other side of everything.
It laughed. At least Osiris thought it was a laugh. A deep, soggy crunching that abruptly squealed up into an almost inaudible, steady tone.
I have questions, the god shouted. I have important decisions to make. I can make things go even slower if you don't cooperate.
He searched his mind for a suitable threat.
I can keep you this way forever.
At last it returned and spoke to him. In the end, it answered several of his questions, but not always in ways that he found useful. In between the few comprehensible phrases, it cried and hissed and sometimes bayed like a dog. Once it spoke to him in the voice of someone he had known, who was now dead. When the audience was finished, the god did not bother with his litter, or his bearers, or even the great river. He went directly and instantly to his hall in Abydos that was, extinguished all the lights, banished all the priests, and sat for a very long while in darkness and silence. Chapter 21. Up the Ladder. Netfeed News. Mars funding shaky. Visual, Martian skyline, Earth on horizon. Voiceover. The ancient human dream of conquering Mars may be coming to an end, brought down by funding problems. Visual, MBC robots at work on Martian surface. Now that its two largest corporate sponsors, ANVAC and Telemorphics, have ended their involvement, the Mars-based construction project, long a target of both left-wing and right-wing pressure groups, seems likely to lose its funding support in Congress as well. President Anford has promised to search for other business sponsorship, but his funding request to the Assembly of Governors, a presidential endorsement of the project which one UN space official called, quote, pretty damn lukewarm, is not deemed likely to move the governors, who are having trouble with their own state and city infrastructures. Rini answered on the first flash. When the screen came up black, she felt sure she knew who it would be.
Irene Sulaweo? So you know my work number 2?
She was faintly nettled by this Martine woman's here-then-gone mystery.
Did you just make a lucky guess that I'd be here before school started? Please remember, Miss Sulaweo, it was you who began this by searching for me.
The French woman sounded amused.
I hope you're not going to be difficult because I have taken the initiative. It's not that. I just didn't expect that I would be able to find you so easily. Information is my business, if you would forgive an old cliche. And I know far more about you now than simply your work number and your whereabouts, Ms. Sulaweo. I know your employment history, your grades in school, your salary. I know that your mother Miriam, who died in the Shoppers Paradise fire, was of Xhosa lineage, that your father Joseph is half Zulu, and that he is currently listed disabled. I know about your brother Stephen in the Durban outskirt hospital. I know what net services you subscribe to, what books you download, even what kind of beer your father drinks. Why are you telling me this? She said tightly. Because I wanted you to know that I am thorough, and because I need to find out these things for myself, needed to find out these things for myself, to find out who you really were before I could talk to you. This time she could not keep the fury from her voice. So I passed the test. Thank you. Merci. There was a long pause. When the mystery woman spoke, her voice was gentler. You came looking for me, Ms. Sulaweo. I am sure you value your privacy. So do I. So where do we go from here? Ah, Martine de Rubin was suddenly businesslike. That is an excellent question. I think a controlled exchange of information is in order. You said that you got my name through Susan van Bleek. I had hoped to speak to her about a subject which interests me. Perhaps you and we share this interest. What subject? What interest is that? First things first. The invisible woman sounded as though she were settling in. Tell me again what happened to Susan, and this time tell me the whole truth, please. It was a laborious process, but not an entirely unpleasant one. The woman on the other end was grudging with information, but there were hints of a dry wit and perhaps even a kind heart hiding behind the reserve. According to Martine de Rubin, she had received a call from Susan after Reni's visit, but had not been able to talk at the time. The postponed conversation had never occurred. Rini did not divulge the doctor's deathbed message, but after she described her brother's illness, her attempts to discover its cause, and the strange city virus left on her machine, the other woman was quiet for a long moment. Rini could sense a sort of turning point, as though a chess game played through its opening moves was finally beginning to take its real shape. Was Dr. Van Bleek calling me because she thought I could help with the problem of your brother, or just help identify this strange city? I don't know. She never told me what she wanted to talk to you about. There was also a book. She left a note behind with the title. Ah, yes, I remember you began to tell me about the book. Could you tell me the title? Early Mesoamerica, by someone named Bolivar Atasco. This time the pause was shorter. The name sounds somewhat familiar. Have you examined the book? I downloaded it, but I can't see anything relevant. I haven't had much chance to really look, though. I am obtaining a copy for myself. Perhaps I will notice something you would not. Rini felt an unexpected sense of relief. Maybe she really can help. Maybe she can help me get into Treehouse, find this man Singh. Her brief moment of gratitude was followed by a pang of uncertainty. Why should she so quickly accept this mystery woman as a possible ally? Because I'm desperate, of course. Out loud, she said, now you know about me, but what about you? All I've heard is that you knew Susan and she tried to reach you. The smooth voice sounded amused. I have not been forthcoming, I know. I value my privacy, but there is nothing mysterious about me. I am what I told you, a researcher, and a fairly well-known one. That you can verify. I've put my life in your hands, you know. I don't feel very secure. That may change. In any case, let me examine the anthropology book. Then I will call you back again at your lunch break. In the meantime, I will send you information on this Atasco. It will save you some time searching. And Ms. Suraweo? She made even Reenie's own name sound like something Gallic. Yes? Next time, perhaps we should call each other Martine and Irene, please? Reenie, not Irene. But yes, I suppose we should. A bientôt, then. Just when Reenie thought the woman had rung off, as silently as the first time, her voice came again. One more thing. I will give you some other information for free, although it will not make you happy, I am afraid. The Durban outskirt medical facility where your brother stays has gone to full Bukavu 4 quarantine this morning. I think there will be no more visitors allowed. She paused again. I am very sorry. Reenie stared at the empty screen, mouth open. By the time she began to ask questions, the line was dead. Kabu found her in her office during the first break. Look at this, she snarled, gesturing at the screen of her pad. All questions on our answer line or contact the Durban Department of Public Health. We hope this will be a temporary measure. Daily updates will be posted, the tired doctor was saying for about the dozenth time. It's on a goddamn loop. They're not even answering their phones. I do not understand. Kabu stared at the screen, then at Reenie. What is this? Tired already at 9:45 in the morning, and yet jittery with furious tension, she told him about the expanded hospital quarantine. Halfway through, she realized he didn't know about Martine de Rubin yet, so she started the explanation over. And do you think this woman is trustworthy? He asked when she had finished. I don't know. I think so. I hope so. I'm beginning to run out of ideas, not to mention strength. You can be here when she calls at lunch and tell me what you think. He nodded slowly. And the information she gave you so far? Reenie had already muted the hospital loop. Now she broke the connection completely and brought up the Atasco files. See for yourself. This Bolivar Atasco is an anthropologist and an archaeologist. Very famous. Rich as hell, too, from a wealthy family. He more or less retired a few years back, but he writes an occasional scientific article. He seems to have houses in about 5 different countries, but South Africa isn't one of them. I don't see what any of it has to do with Stephen. Perhaps it does not. Perhaps it is something in the book itself, some idea that Dr. Van Vliet meant you to see. Maybe. Martine's looking at it too. She might come up with something. What about the other thing? The thing you discovered before the doctor died? Reenie shook her head wearily. It was hard to think of anything besides Stephen, now even farther from her, sealed in that hospital like a fly locked in amber. What thing are you talking about? Treehouse, you said. All the references to this Singh, this blue dog anchorite man, pointed to Treehouse. But you never told me what Treehouse is. If you had spent more time gossiping with other students instead of studying so much, you'd have heard all about it. Reenie closed the Atasco files. She had the beginnings of a bad headache and couldn't stand looking at the compact text any longer. It's an urban legend in the VR world, almost a myth, but it's real. Kabu's smile was slightly pained. Are all myths false, then? She winced inwardly. I didn't mean to imply anything. Sorry, it's been a bad day already, and it's just started. Besides, I'm not good on religion, Kabu. You did not offend me, and I did not mean to cause you more upset. He patted her hand, a touch as light as the brush of a bird's wing. But often I think that people believe things which can be measured are true things, and things which cannot be measured are untrue things. What I read of science makes it even more sad, for that is what people point to as a truth. Yet science itself seems to say that all we can hope to find are patterns in things. But if that is true, why is one way of explaining a pattern worse than others? Is English inferior to Xhosa, or my native tongue, because it cannot express all the things they can? Rini felt a vague sense of oppression, not because of her friend's words, but because of what seemed the increasing impossibility of understanding anything. Words and numbers and facts, the tools she had used to measure and manipulate her world, now seemed to have lost their sharp edges. Kabu, my head's hurting and I am worried about Stephen. I can't really have a decent discussion about science and religion right now. I think we're going to stop there because it's after 2 o'clock. And we're right in the middle of a scene that goes on and on and on and on. So, anyway, as yes, I think Jeremy is. Oh, I'm just looking at this. Yeah, Kristen or anybody else who's interested. It is. Yes, you can. Once this is gone, right now I'm going to finish it up, and then once it's on Facebook, you can go backwards and forwards in Facebook. I think just like before. So, anyway, so with that, I'm going to hang it up. That is tonight's reading, and tomorrow, well, today technically, 7 p.m. I will be continuing with the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. No, with Rini and Kabu. And until then, since it's already after 2 o'clock, I thank you as always for joining me. It's such a pleasure. And I I don't order you, I don't command you, but I implore you to keep taking good care of yourselves and good care of the people around you. There are a lot of people out there in need of love and care. And I will see you very soon. Thank you once again, and be good. Peace.